we are going to talk about raid logs. This is a really popular, really popular topic. People really want to know how to read raid logs because they want to get better and they want to be able to find out what mistakes they're making and how to learn from it. Yeah. So excited to hear from Aizza. Aizza, of course, member of Win, big raider, big energy. Also, thank you, Angry Insomniac, for the prime. Aizza is awesome. Good friend of mine. He's really into anime these days. Has a TikTok that's blowing up. Excited about that, I'm sure. So let's get to it.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's a fun new arc for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in the static reps channel of people asking like, okay, here's a log, I don't know what I'm looking at. Where do I go? Where do I do? So there's a few kind of basic things that you want to look at. Most people will open a log, they'll look at their DPS, and they'll be like, okay, I was 3rd on the DPS charts. Cool. That's it. And then they close the log. They don't really know what to look at. So there's a few other things to look at on a log that are pretty important. The first one is going to be looking at really the buffs tab. That's going to tell you all your boon uptime, which is a huge, effect on your end DPS there. And that's something that a lot of people will look at and kind of misdiagnose issues looking at buffs tab a lot of times, because a lot of fights, you can't just glance at the overall buffs tab. You have to look at it in various different ways. So this first log that I have up is just a Mursat Overseer log. It's just a Mursat Overseer log because it's basically a golem. So everything
Aizza,
is pretty...
just to help you out here, can you press control and then mouse wheel zoom in a little bit so that it's a little bit easier for people to read if they're watching on the stream? Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So basically, when you're looking at a Mo log, you're looking at a Golem log, it's all one big phase. So you can just glance at the buff uptime. So you can look here and you can see the average stacks of might that everybody has, the average fury, average quickness, alacrity, protection, so on and so forth. Some buffs are important on some fights. Some buffs aren't as important on some fights. There's other things on this screen or in the logs that you can look at, the mechanics tab, which will be more important in other fights, but you can see even in Mo, okay, this person had protect, they used it at some point. They dispelled on one soldier in Mursat Overseer. We claimed one platform in Mursat Overseer. So there is a lot of very important information here. A log like Mo, you basically can glance at, okay, what's the DPS? Where am I? If I'm, a DPS player, am I above or below the boon players? If I'm, a boon player, am I, where am I with respect to the other boon player? You look at the buffs, you see what the uptime is, and you can kind of move on from a simple log like this. But then you get to fights like, let's say, what do I have up here? Sabir. So if you go to Sabir, now you've got a couple other things you want to look at. So you've got damage, obviously. But then you also have this all the way on the right, this break bar. Now, the damage in the break bar is all broken up between target as well as total. So a boss like Cardinal Sabir, you've got the boss itself, then you have all those little mini platforms in between the boss, you've got all the wisps and all those other things. So you've got target for all of these categories, and then you have all. So target is going to be just what you do to Cardinal Sabir, whereas all is what you're doing to Cardinal Sabir plus all of his little minions and all of his little friends. So when I get a Sabir log from a team and they're like, our kill is slow, what can we do to improve? The very first thing I check is all of the break bar information. Because oftentimes what you'll find is you'll see one person or two people above 10,000 on break bar and one or two people at like 1,000 or 2,000. Without even knowing how big the break bar is, you immediately know there is a little bit of a disparity there. Some people are not really putting in as much work on the break bar. That immediately can make your kills faster. So you can know to look for that, and you can look and say, okay, this player right here had the lowest break bar in this team, or in this kill. So you can then start from there and say, okay, what reason did they have for that? Were they leaving the group to handle other things? Did they down? What happened? So that's kind of one of the biggest things that a lot of people just look over, is looking at the break bar. Now, if you go to buffs, now when you've got a boss like this where things are split up, you can see there might be slight differences in buffs. You have phases instead of just worrying about the overall. Now you have to look at the different phases. So Sabir doesn't show it as well because this log is old and doesn't show the different adds, but when you look at phase 1, this is phase 1 when we're on the boss. And we can see, okay, he had lower buffs. Now in this kill, he was running off to place a portal, so we understand he left the group. So that explains that. But let's say everybody's boons were a little low, then we know something happened in phase 1. Maybe it was the boon strip at the very beginning. Maybe we used a lot of our buffs or boons right at the beginning, and then they all got stripped away. So we have kind of something to start at, to look at.
So what's going on here right now is you're basically playing Sherlock Jones. You're trying to find a few clues that help indicate where the problem might be. So these are sort of big, broader, you're funneling or narrowing it in. You're going, okay, well, if it's a break bar thing, well, we can look at maybe where the break bar went wrong in total now by looking in a specific phase.
Exactly. Right. And I can look up logs on Wingman and try to find problems in Wingman logs, public logs, and basically show you how the process of elimination would work from there. But from a kind of a high level, you're looking at all this. The other way to check is, let's say you didn't know what was going on here. Like, I knew he left the group, but let's say you didn't know. How can you find out? Well, you've got this nice little tab called Combat Replay.
This is probably one of the most underutilized pieces of content in Arc DPS. People never look at this in the logs. They don't even know it exists to some extent. Some people just look at the statistics and think that's it. But if you actually want to find out where something went wrong, this is the place.
Exactly. So Combat Replay gives you this nice little screen. You can zoom in and out. So you can kind of zoom in, you can click full fight, you can move it to phases and see how it moves us around. It even shows you things like the tornadoes on the platforms and everybody's location. If you want to kind of highlight someone, you can click a name off to the left. So if I click myself, you can see it puts like a tiny green box around me. So I can see where I am. It even shows you which way you're facing. Got a little yellow arrow to show which way you're facing. So for classes like Firebrand, I'm trying to figure out your mantras, which have a longer radius or a longer range in front of you in that cone. This is an important piece of information. So like if this Firebrand is a quick brand back there, he is behind most of the group, facing the group. So that helps him give quickness to people. Now, for the case where we had players off the group here placing portals, if you watch, I have highlighted a Virtuoso, the one that had lower boons at the beginning.
How did you highlight them? You just clicked them?
You just click them off to the side here, to the left. And so you can see he's not on the group because he's off placing a portal. So that explains why his quickness and all of his boons were low. He missed all of the boons at the beginning of the fight. So we've figured out what went wrong and why he was low. We understand, okay, this isn't a gameplay issue, this was a difference in strategy. So that's kind of how you can narrow it down. There's other pieces of information that you can find on these logs in the Combat Replay that are more relevant in other places, other fights. Try to think of another good log to look at.
Show me one where something is obviously scuffed. There's just, because I think one of the things that people really struggle with is they go, okay, I don't even know where to begin because it seemed like everything went wrong.
Wingman loads.
And I think that's where a lot of teams actually kind of crumble because they all start pointing the finger at each other and they go, well, it was your fault because you did this. Well, it was your fault. You did this. And nobody can ever really get to the root of the problem.
Yeah. So we can grab a random log off Wingman. It takes forever to load. Give me a boss, Neb. Just a random boss.
Oh, Veil Guardian.
Veil Guardian. And let's just grab... Should be able to just grab a random log.
There we are.
We should probably... Let me grab a fail log if I can get a fail.
Yeah. Only fails. Dark times are ahead.
Only fails. All right. apologize for anyone that's okay. That's 16 seconds in. Probably not a good log. All right, here we go. This is 3 minutes in. They're in the final phase. They failed right after, or during the second split phase, or right after the split phase. I know half the people in this.
I
log,
know
so
half the people in there too.
Kind of funny. So the first thing that I notice here is there is a lot of really low damage that could come from a couple different places. One is just need to practice rotations. One could be here. One could be scuffed boons, things like that. The first place to look on something like this, you can kind of tell if gear is messed up by looking at these icons at the top. So what these little icons are telling you is who has a lot of a specific stat. So you can tell if something's off. Like if this Willbender had a little shield like this guy does, Willbender has really high toughness. That's probably not supposed to be the case. So that would tell you, hey, their gear is probably not good. So that's kind of the first thing that you'd look at. A lot of these look fine to me. I mean, this is probably a heal scourge right here. Toughness, I'd imagine that's probably celestial. You've got a heal mech. You've got a Condi Druid, Condi Harbinger. You've got another Heal Tempest, it looks like, and then some other Condi classes. You can tell right here, this Harbinger only used staff. They never swapped off staff. So that's already, obviously you can tell, hey, that's a rotational issue. So we need to maybe, if this is my static, I'm having a sit down with that gamer and I'm saying, hey, we need to practice your rotation because you should be doing more than just playing with staff.
Wait, is that really just staff? Is that a bug?
Yeah, that is really just a staff.
Just staff, okay, yeah.
And then this Condi Druid is just on shortbow. Now Condi Druid came out after I stopped playing, so I don't know what the rotation of Condi Druid is. But if they're supposed to swap off shortbow, then it's the same conversation there. So if it only shows one weapon or one weapon set, like the Mechanist or the Tempest, although you can't weapon swap on those, but that means that they never weapon swapped. It's not, they didn't even use a skill, they never even swapped into those weapons, so the log doesn't even recognize you have them equipped. So that's the first thing that you see. The second thing you can notice on this is like, okay, this is a pretty long time to still have a third of the boss left. So where are we losing our time? If you hover your mouse over here, over these, it tells you how long each of those phases were. So phase 1 was about 42 seconds. Split 1 was about 22 seconds. Phase 2 is 45 seconds, and this kill bugged, and we didn't get a split 2 somehow,
nice.
Which is interesting, which might be why the log is a fail. So I guess that you can notice that there should be a split 2 in here. But you do know, hey, they're losing time. Phase 1 was 42 seconds, phase 3 is 56 seconds, so something different happened. They weren't consistent. So if you want to find things out, okay, well, let's look at phase 1, let's look at buffs. These look, they look kind of fine. Your quickness is about 90%, alacrity is about 90%, except for one gamer who has a little bit lower. So what
is there
I
a
want to
number
see
that
now,
you're typically looking for? What do you think is a good number for each boon, respectively?
So for might, I would say I would want 22.5 plus on active boss phases, because there is a little ramp up time. For quickness, the absolute lowest I would want to see is about 90% for quickness and alacrity. I personally, for like my logs, I would want 95 plus if I'm the boon player. If I'm the might provider, I want 24 plus. That's my own personal thing. But I'm not going to complain about a log if it's 22 for might, 90% for fury, quickness, and alacrity. Protection is a funny one because there's some fights where you don't need any protection whatsoever. Protection matters more when you have it, not how much you have. So for like a fight like Samurog, if you have 0 protection on Samurog, it really doesn't matter unless you're the fixate and you're getting punched, because you can avoid pretty much all damage on Samurog. So protection is kind of a situational thing. Regen, you want 90 plus. Regen is one of the most freely applicable boons across many classes, so you want 90 plus on regen, 90 plus on swiftness. The rest of them, again, situational. Stability probably isn't going to be there on 90% of fights. Vigor, you want 90 plus as well. Sorry. So those would be kind of what I'd be looking for. If this was really low, then I'd maybe take a look at generation and see, okay, where is all of our boons coming from? So I can tell, and these numbers look very funny, so I don't pay too much attention to the numbers as much as I pay attention to their relationship to each other. So like I can tell in subgroup 2, sub 2 right here, this Dragon Hunter had Feel My Wrath because they generated some quickness for their group. So they were helping out. Same thing with this Willbender down here. They were generating some quickness for their group. You can see the Alacrity being helped out probably by the Harbinger Elite skill for that group. A little bit there as well. So you can see kind of who is helping out and providing a little bit. You can see the Mechanist provided the most might for their group. You can also see some of the overflow into other groups. So generation off group is how much you provided for the other subgroup. So the Mechanist had some overflow might. They had some overflow alacrity, protection, those kinds of things. You can see the squad. I don't generally pay too much attention to squad anymore now that we don't have 10 player boons. So the next thing to look at here is, let's say we want to identify what happened with the Scourge. Why are your boons pretty low compared to the rest of the group? Well, my mind instantly thought they probably got ported. So you go to the Mechanics tab. I already forgot their Mubis. Okay. You go to the Mechanics tab, look at a Mubis. They didn't get ported. They stood in a Seeker, so that's probably a positioning issue. If they didn't get ported and they're missing some boons and everybody else has good enough boons, it's probably a positioning issue. This is now where you go to combat replay. So I click them, so when everybody pops up here, it's going to highlight them in green right here. Typical VG start in that bottom right. And you hit play. And you can see how everybody's moving. You instantly see, look at how everybody's clustered up. That person's already moving out to the edge. So depending on who their quickness provider is, what sub are they in? And this one, their quickness provider is going to be this Harbinger. Well, the Harbinger is pretty far away from them. They're in the middle, right where my mouse is kind of moving around. So they could be outside of the radius of that quickness. Well, let's say we want to figure that out. So let's click that Harbinger, and then you've got all these different options down here in the bottom left. So if the radius we're checking is 180, now it puts that circle around the Harbinger. So I know everything inside that circle is 180 radius away. So if their radius is 180 for their boons or whatever it is, and you're outside of that circle, you're not getting them. If they were a firebrand, you can do the cone, and it shows you, hey, that's who's in your mantra. And then you've also got that circle, so it shows you, and you can change these. So if the radius is 60, now you've got that tiny, well, that's bad because it doesn't really show. Let's go 100. See, now you've got a smaller circle around. So you can kind of see everything. So you can adjust all of these. You can do multiple circles if they've got multiple different applications. So you can see all of these different indicators to figure out, okay, are we inside range, are we outside of range, and how can we solve this problem? So the first thing I would tell them, this Scourge specifically, let me these off, is, hey, immediately when the fight started, you walked away. Let's see what happens when they continue. So they kind of come back. They're still on the outside of the group, but they should be fine here. Except now, look at where they're going and look at the Harbinger. That's probably their Harbinger. Yep, so that's their quickness down at the bottom. Look how far away they are. So they're going to miss every boon at that pace, at that stage. I don't know where they're going. Maybe they're going off to fear the Seekers or something like that. I don't know. This could be something that they're designed to do. You can also see here the Shadow Fiends and everything that are tethered to the Scourge. They're running off to go do a green, it looks like. So that could be part of it. But, I mean, you can see all this really good information on the Combat Replay tab. You can make it go really fast. So 8 times speed. You can make it go really slow, all the way down to 1/8 frames, basically 1/8 times speed. So you can see, you can really tweak this around. You can scroll. And then other important things on this page would be, let me zoom out. If you click show buffs, it will show you all the buffs that everybody has. I can't really scroll out or zoom out on the buffs
at any given
section
time,
here.
right?
At any given time. So
we
if
can
I click
see that
play,
there's a bunch of people that have quite low might right now, and there's a couple of people that have like perfect might.
Yep. So we click play and we see this person's might goes 14, 15, 16. Might be hard to see on the stream, but the numbers are changing. You can see all their different might stacks. You can see when boons fall off. You can see their health bars. You can see all of this.
You can see what skills they're using.
Exactly. You can see what skills they're using, so you can tell, this is where someone was asking in the Static Reps channel, hey, how do I tell if someone stunned or immobilized a Tormented Dead? Well, there isn't technically a reading in the log to tell you that, but you can come here and you can say, let's pretend that, these Seekers are the Tormented Deads on SH. Well, if I'm looking at these Seekers and I see that, I don't know, this Soul Beast used Axe 4, which is a pull, and the Tormented Dead or the Seeker all of a sudden gets pulled towards the group, well, they probably used Axe 4 on it and pulled it in. So I now understand what that problem was. I know who to talk to and say, hey, be mindful of this. This happened.
Flame them out completely.
Yeah, flame them out completely. Scream at them. Don't do that.
That will not yield good results. Yeah, don't do that.
Absolutely not. So we've kind of figured out exactly what went wrong with that Scourge, with their boons, by just looking at combat replay and kind of watching the fight again. Snab, what else do you think is a common misconception or question on logs?
A lot of times people get really confused about how to tell where the start of the chaos was. A lot of people are like, well, I don't really know what the root of the problem is. I'm just overwhelmed by all of this. I have no idea how to know who's even at fault for something. Who do I even know to talk to? Because all I know is that it seems like we're failing to different things every time.
So we've all been a part of a chaotic Deimos, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this is a 12% fail.
Oh, that's painful. Yeah.
That's painful. They were very close. 7 minutes in, they almost hit 10%. And it's a CM. Oh, very, very painful.
Yeah.
So without having seen this kill, obviously if you were part of this group, you would know a certain couple things, like if an oil triggered or something like that. But we don't know that. So if I was just sent this log and they were like, I don't know what went wrong, figure it out. Check mechanics.
Oh,
okay?
oil.
Oil is not the important piece here.
Oh.
Oil T is the important piece.
Yes, that's true.
Oil T is who first stepped in an oil. And this is 3 separate oils that were triggered. All of these other ones are you took hits from the oil after it was triggered. Now these 2 are a little higher than the group average, so probably want to check and see what happened there. But this means 3 oils were triggered at some point. My first thought is that's probably what caused this wipe. The other thing to take a look at would be TPs. That's a lot of teleports, which means that 25% Sol was left basically untouched when it spawned.
Oh boy,
that's
not a good sign. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that the teleports were the cause of the death. I'm even gonna go as far as saying that the teleport made them go into the oil to trigger it. But this is a good point, right? This is a great example because what caused it? Was it somebody touching the oil, or was it people not CCing Sol?
Exactly. So
how to find that out?
Can look in here and let's just click targets up here so I can see Deimos' health and the break bars of the bosses and everything there, because I don't really care about everybody's boons and all of that stuff right now. I'm going to speed it up because I want to get to 60% on Deimos, because that's when oils start to trigger. So we're going to get to 60% and then we'll slow back down. So first oil just spawned. That's what that orange circle is. Immediately, that Untamed is in the oil. Now, the oil spawn, they can get out of it. It may not trigger. So they got out of it in time.
Saved.
It didn't trigger. But you can see how already I'm telling that Untamed. Watch your position.
Yeah, you're Monka S right now. You're sweating.
Exactly. So now we know another oil is going to come up. I didn't pay attention to the timer, but another one comes up 15 seconds after that. We can see the oil right now would spawn on this Soul Beast. So this Soul Beast, I think there's someone under the Soul Beast. And these 2 mechanists, maybe that Virtuoso, are going to need to move. The rest of them, okay.
Oh, here we go. It
just spawned. And a pizza. everybody looks like they probably got out of it in time.
Yeah.
So we're clear on that one. So we keep going. I'm just going to speed up until we see an oil trigger. So they all went down for 50%. Hands come in after they kill Saul. Oil in the middle. Oil still fine. So it looks like they didn't really have oil issues until probably the teleport started coming in.
The last phase.
Now you can see these little red dots. These are all the greeds walking into the middle, which on CM are a bit of an issue. There's a different icon for the prides. It looks like VG. It's right there, kind of in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. They let that get in there, didn't they?
Yeah, they let that one definitely blew up on Saul.
Yeah.
So we still haven't touched an oil. However, a couple things that we can note. We've got some dead people now.
Uh-oh.
So we zoom past the dead people. Got to try to figure out what killed them. What happened to their health? At a glance, it looks like they maybe just died to ticking damage. But
Yeah,
you can
it just
see
kept
here,
ticking.
right now, there isn't a lot that should be hurting them other than Saul's auto attacks. They did just get ported. But they shouldn't have much health issues. This guy got knocked by the pizza. That catalyst. So he got knocked all the way out there. He misformed back. They're going to get him up. Right now, they should just be focusing on recovering and making sure that they can get everything stable. They lose 2 players because of ticking damage and because of getting ported and people getting pizzaed and probably getting Vuln stacks from those pizzas. Now you got to get back under control and try to get everything put together and try to finish the clear here. Because you're sitting at, what is the boss's health? Yeah, you've got 4% left to go. So we know something goes catastrophic in the next 10 seconds. Probably.
Yeah. It can all go wrong here.
Full speed. We do have, they honestly may have just, they probably lost a prize.
Oh, yeah. Wait, well then
Yeah.
where does the oil touch?
I don't know where the oil touch is. The log might just show it even though it didn't get bigger. Yeah, they just lost a prize there. Because they didn't touch any, no oils got expanded. Yeah, no oils got expanded. Oh, we didn't get a spicy oil
Didn't the
touch.
log tell us that they touched the oil?
Yeah, so sometimes the logs will show you if you touch it, but if you get dodge out in time before it actually
there's
triggers,
the evade frame, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually then, that makes sense because there were those, I recall at least twice where the player was in there for quite some time and it looked like they dodged out of it.
Yeah. Find it. Log.
So, okay, so let's rewind a little bit though. If we think about that last log,
Okay.
and somebody said, Aizza, who's to blame? What, who, not that you're trying to blame someone, but like, what is the root of the problem? How do you address the problem? How do you get better if you don't know what it is? So they're coming to you. They're like, what do I tell my players to do there? What happened?
Okay. So I have backed up to where 25% green just happened.
Yeah.
First thing I'm telling them probably, and a lot of people may not like this, you should not all go in that 25%. There is never a time when that is more advantaged than sacrificing it and just pushing that last 15%. But we're past that. They all went down. I don't know if this is designed where these two to stay up and you have an oil kiter and your actual healer. So I'm waiting for the group to come back up because everything fell apart when the group came back.
It's like they're
And
struggling
what
with that
probably
pride
happened.
there. Yeah, that pride's gonna make it in because nobody's got a mob.
Yep. So they all just came back. Everybody's back in the middle. There's Saul. Saul just came back as well. The group right now should be under Deimos. I understand there's a pizza, but they should be under Deimos, dodge the pizza, because that will bring Saul most likely to the group. I heard you say on stream earlier that Saul aggro's on the highest precision, which is true. Most likely that is going to be in this group now. It wasn't the case a little while ago when there was spotter and things like that and people had to account for that. Most likely that would drag Saul to the group. Right now, Saul is away from Deimos, so they have a decision as a group. Do we kill Saul or do we kill Deimos? If you attack Saul, then the fight gets dragged out. You have the risk of the good Saul losing all their health because of prides and greeds, and you have a risk of additional mechanics getting triggered like oils, your hand kiter losing to attrition on the hands, things like that. If you attack Deimos, then you need to pay attention to Saul for breaking his bar. Right now we can see that break bar is up. So if we don't break this, everybody gets ported. They didn't break it. Everybody just got ported. That person got ported into an oil, the catalyst, or the untamed, which didn't trigger somehow. They were quick enough to dodge out of it. But that's where things start to fall apart. So everybody just got scattered. We've got low health on a couple people here. Almost no one is above 90%, which lowers your damage for most builds. So that's going to slow things down. You need to get back together as a group and get healed up. Looks like they're trying to get back together, but they're still staying spread out a little bit. Now Saul's come back, so now you're in a good position. Right now, they're in a great position. They should be able to cleave both of them relatively easily, and they should be able to pay attention to Saul, so when that break bar comes up, they can break it. I would
sense
still be
conflict,
focusing.
though. Yeah, it looks like they're splitting up right now. This is where there's probably one of their first big mistakes, because now half the team is on Saul and half is on Deimos, and they're not going to kill either fast enough. It's the worst situation. You either want to kill one or the other.
Yeah, you have to have a unified decision. Now, there's a good point brought up in your chat by Xe here. The tank could stop all of this by themselves. So if the tank just drags Deimos up to here, towards the middle, which is where you should be tanking Deimos. You should not ever be tanking towards the edge, especially in CM, where if an oil drops in the middle, it doesn't matter because you don't have a ward anyways. The tank dragging the boss up here on top of Saul and closer to the Pride allows the group to cleave both Saul and Deimos, as well as handle the Pride all together, all at once, without having to split their attention like this. It also means everybody knows exactly where the oil is going to spawn, because it's going to spawn where everybody is. So you don't have any surprises there. But they're splitting up. You've got 4 people, it looks like. Yeah, 4 people on Deimos. 5 people kind of on Saul, but 4 of them look like they're going towards the Pride. 1 is sticking to Saul. And then your poor handkiter who's probably screaming at you to go faster. Now one just left Deimos and decided to join the group, which is the correct play if they're going to go with this. You want to make sure that the group sticks together. If you're going to go kill Saul, then everybody goes and kills Saul. You can leave one person on Deimos with the tank to try to keep oils over there and away from the group if you would like. But for the most part, you want the whole group to stay together. So they do make the right decision here of all going together. They make the wrong decision again of splitting up. You got 2 people running over here to get a tear, which tears at 10% left before phasing should not be your concern, unless there's like 10 of them. They will almost never actually cause a wipe. They don't strip Aegis like people commonly say they do. So you don't have to worry about them being a problem with Mind Crush. If there's a ton of them, then you can collect them, but you don't want to really go out of your way like this. You still have 4 people hanging out with
tank went to the worst possible spot, because now
that is correct.
Now they're between 2 oils, so the team has to walk through. And what you find is there's this psychological trauma that occurs when somebody has to see both of the oils and walk in between them. Nobody wants to do that. It's scary. So what happens is everybody walks around the oils, and then I don't know that this happens, but
look, you can see it in the catalyst. You can see.
Look at the indecision. Go back.
Watch the catalyst start to walk through, and then he's like, "Wait a second." You can even see the arrow moving as he looks at the 2 of them, and you can almost hear the gears turn. And then he's like, "Do I have room? Do I have room?"
Look, he's like,
and he just sits there, and then he doesn't make a decision. At that point, he's not being useful to the group at all. He's just standing in no man's land, just standing there trying to be indecisive, and that he could be more decisive. It's not entirely on the tank, but the tank could avoid that decision-making process 100% by just moving up here.
Yeah, but this is a perfect illustration of where teams get confused, because the Firebrand, the tank, is going to go, "Why didn't you make a decision?" And the Catalyst is going, "You moved it the wrong place." So people are struggling to find the root of the problem here.
Yep. We've got another point brought up in chat is you don't want pizza on the kite. Handkiter can move. The handkiter can move. Honestly, the handkiters need to get over the mental block of staying on the northern edge they can move around and hand kite anywhere on this platform. So if the group is up here in the northwest, hand kiter can go down here to the southeast. It doesn't matter where you drop your hands, just don't drop them on the group and be farthest away from Deimos so you can collect them. At this point, we now notice there's another issue. A pride just spawned directly opposite of the group. Someone has to immobilize that pride, because I bet you, yep, that gets in, you're dead. He cannot take another pride. So that needs to be handled, but the group is up here handling Bad Saul, who's only at 10% health. So you theoretically, if you can slow down that pride, you can kill Bad Saul, get around, and recover. I don't know what they do. They leave Bad Saul. Whoops. They start to leave Bad Saul. You go back a little. Do they get ported on this break bar? Yep, they get ported on that break bar because half of them all left, so they weren't there to break it. Luckily, one of the oils went away because I think that catalyst got ported directly into it. Now Saul looks like he's going to die here. The pride got immobilized. So now, again, you're in a good spot. You can recover. How's everybody's health? Kind of okay. This is the hand kiter down here, so we ignore them. You've got two people that are a little low, but they should be fine. But again, tank has them in a really bad position here. Now they can't really go through those two oils. You'd be kind of crazy to go through those two oils. You have to go around them. So they're going to go around, but a pizza's there, so it delays them. That catalyst gets knocked, and he ends up getting downed because of the pizza, because he didn't dodge it. So now you've got to figure out how to get him up. He misforms in. We already saw that part. But again, here we are, back and kind of in an okay spot. Except now we've got an oil drop. What does the tank do? The tank runs Deimos to, again, the worst spot possible. Rather than just rotating with the group and making sure they can continue to hit the boss, he runs the boss away from the group. So now everybody has to go back around these oils again. Everybody's split up, and I don't know where they're going. What?
They're running away.
Oh,
I actually think that oil expanded.
That is an oil. Yeah, I think that oil did trigger. Because that makes sense with their movement.
Right there. Wait, yeah, go back a little bit. I did see a mechanist go right into it. It's right here.
There. The mech, and yeah.
And then you see they start to run away.
So the mech goes in. Yep. Did they use, which mech is this? Oh, probably this one.
Oh,
I'm gonna assume the one that just used jump shot. Bossmang?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So they
jump
just
shot classic.
rifle 5 into it. So they probably wanted to go around this way, but the oil triggered, so they all ran away from the oil. So that makes sense. So we're not going to get mad at them for running away. And now they're just kind of sitting here, but here's the problem. You've got this big oil that's taking up this entire area, and you have a pride beelining it for Saul, which will end the fight. So now they've got to shift all their attention to the pride and make sure they kill that. So everything just kind of slowly compounds on essentially one bad decision all the way back here to move the boss away from where the group was. And it just slowly snowballed. Yeah, I also didn't know that the oil triggering, I thought it showed in the logs, to be honest. So there you go. That's how this one fell apart, was essentially this tank making this decision. There's other pieces, but when this happened and the tank didn't move the boss with the, because this moves the boss up here, hand kiter rotates around to southeast, these oils aren't a factor for the group anymore, and they can cleave Saul, pride, and boss all at once, and it probably makes this clear a lot simpler. They probably get the clear.
Wow. Well, I think we've come to the time where we can accept some questions. Does anyone have any questions in the Twitch chat and or in the Discord?
Xe, everyone except for the hand kiter and tank and one person went down on the 25%. If you're in Discord, you can unmute and ask a question too.
feel like I'm in a college lecture. Well, congratulations. I'm a college instructor, so come to the right place. And Aizza's doing a great job too. So.
I do want to be a college instructor one day.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Do it.
My life plan was always to go get some industry experience and then go for a doctorate eventually and try to teach.
Yeah. It's fun. But then you also become filled with doom and despair as people lie to you.
Yeah.
If you can ignore that, then you'll be fine.
No questions whatsoever. Everybody's I'm not going to see another
You explained
question.
it with perfection.
I won't see a single question about how to read a log or what to look for in a log for the next month.
Maybe not. How to gear check.
How to?
Well,
I mean,
you can kind of see.
you can kind of do it here. You can see that this guy's got healing power. This guy's a condivert. This guy's healing power concentration. You can tell nobody here has really high toughness other than the tank. It is a little flawed because it's relative to the highest player's stat in your. So if you have, let me find a decent log. Actually, here's a good log. So we don't have a healer in this Doom at all, but because I had like 10 toughness so I could tank, I'm gonna have the highest toughness or one of the highest toughness, and because this is a Selly, I think these are both like Selly or Ritualist Specters, they're showing healing power and toughness and all these different stats, so it's a little flawed.
How does the boon generation work? Not sure if you've gone through this already. I have some logs where it says my generation on, i.e. a lack is 70%, but uptime is 100% for my sub. Why is that?
Yeah. So boon generation.
Wait, let me try to answer that before to see if I understand, because I get confused with this as well. If it says your generation is 70%, wouldn't that mean that somebody else is filling in the gaps?
That is correct. So I am
somebody else is doing 30%.
Find a good this oh, that's generation self. You try to find a decent okay, this kind of works. So let's just go to... Alright, so we can look here, and this is a Doom log, so the uptimes are going to look scuffed because you've got boon strips and phases. But Alacrity, we're going to focus on sub 2 because that's the one I noticed. Alacrity for sub 2 shows 86%. If we go to Generation Group, the Alac source only shows a 60% generation. He got some extension from this Herald right here at 4.4%. Now, you'll also notice those numbers don't add up, which is why when I talked about this at the beginning, I don't generally look at the numbers as much as I look at the relationship to each other. So when you're looking at this, you can understand, okay, I got a little bit of help from this Herald. Where this becomes really useful is if they ever bring back a situation like we had a couple years ago where we had Righteous Rebel Revenants or Renegades that are splitting Alacrity, you can see if one of them is really not pulling their weight. I might be able to dig up an old RR log.
What I think might be important to mention is when you hovered over those numbers, it said a percent wasted and a percent by extension, right?
Yes.
So wasted, my understanding is that would mean that you're using the skill when people aren't around, or it's not hitting all 5 people.
Or they are already capped max duration. And so it ends up just getting thrown into the void. Let me see. This might have it. Let me double check this. Oh, that log's... Hang on. I'm looking at some old logs, and DPS report might not even let me look, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find...
Well, Aizza's doing that. Any other quick questions?
Yeah.
We have a few minutes here, so just want to make sure we get everything before we wrap up. When trying to speed up an encounter, how do I know what to focus on? Main DPS phases versus split phases? How do I compare with similar logs? That's a really good question. It's really encounter specific, I would say. There are some split phases that'll save quite a lot of time. An example is Sabir, where if you use portals when you're supposed to be jumping up on the platforms, you actually save a pretty significant amount of time. So I think one of the best ways to do that, and Aizza can correct me if I'm wrong, is to compare yourself to some of the top logs and then go into the combat replay and take a look at what they're doing. For example, if you've never used a portal at Sabir, you might see them using a portal and go, wait, how the heck did they do that? And, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that if you were to send a message to one of these players and be like, hey, we were studying your logs and we saw you do this thing. How did you do that? I would argue that most people would be like, wow, good for you for studying our logs. Here's how we did it. I think most people would be very open to helping and support you. When you're also trying to speed up an encounter, there's a lot of things that go in. There's just a lot of variables. For example, if you're on a fairly new squad, let's say you're on Veil Guardian, half of your DPS are playing Condi and half are playing Power, you're immediately losing the benefit of both, because Condi takes some time to ramp and Power loses its efficacy over time. So if everyone's playing Power, you're going to speed that encounter up. On bosses where there's no sort of invulnerability phase, or where you can just keep attacking the boss, like Ursat Overseer, for example, you can ramp and stay ramped the entire fight. So it would be a little bit more beneficial.
Yep. So this is I'm comparing an old Samurag log from Win and a Samurag log I found just because I recognized Chupa in the log. This one is 5.5 minutes. Versus ours, it's basically 2 minutes faster. So if you want to see where a lot of time was lost, you can look at, just hover over here, phase 1, 46 seconds versus 70 seconds. Okay, so they were slower there. My first thought is going to be break bars. This is a 9-second break bar. That is incredibly long. Our break bars are 4 seconds apiece. So that's already 5 seconds right there. Now, this is comparing like an extreme optimized planned out, practiced, mathed out kill versus just a random log on Wingman. So it's an extreme example. The other thing I noticed in this log was, okay, split 1. So when you go kill Rigum and Goldem, 31 seconds in our log, 30 seconds in their log. So basically the exact same. But then split 2, they lost 17 seconds on split 2. So now you know something went wrong there, because there's no reason that you should have been that much slower than your split 1. So if you go to split 2, a couple things, I mean, maybe someone's dead. Here you go. Someone was dead. So lost time on that. That person maybe was one of their boons. You look at it, looks like they were. So their whole group has no alacrity, basically. So now you've already kind of figured out, okay, that's where big time loss came from. I mean, phase 1 was 70 seconds. Phase 2 was only 7 seconds slower. This player probably died in phase 2. And then phase 3, they lost a big amount of time because half their group was playing without alacrity. So you can kind of pinpoint where a little bit lightly what went wrong and where went wrong. Now, other pieces is just general rotation, which brought up another thing that someone wanted me to look at was rotations. So if you go to player summary and then you go to simple rotation, it shows you all of this.
Can you do that again, but just a little bit slower so that people...
Yep. Sorry. So general stats, click on a player here. So I picked the Daredevil because I'm going to look at a Daredevil in the other kill. So I clicked on this Daredevil, so now it's got their box in green. I click player summary. It'll show you this at first, which is just their total damage from every skill. This is an overwhelming screen, and it would take me a while to explain everything here. Simple rotation is probably the most important thing here. So if you look at simple rotation, it shows you everything they did, including their dodges, including different traits getting procced. It shows when they used their power signets, every weapon swap, which on Daredevil obviously isn't going to be that often. It also, you see these little highlights. So the light blue is an instant cast or when a trait or a sigil or a rune goes off. Green means you completed the full aftercast, which is mostly irrelevant information for kind of general casual players. Red is the really important one. Every red box here is an interrupted action. So whether you started another action, like this one looks like they started this attack and then they dodged. So they interrupted it. This one, they started the attack and dodged, and then they started Fist Flurry. So you can see all of that. When you look at this and then you look at a really good player, and I am hoping left doesn't let me down here, there are actually not a single red box here.
Wow.
That I can tell at a first glance. So
can you show the graph as well? There's a comment from Ben that said that the graph is a good way to look as well, because you can see when there's an auto attack snuck in.
This graph, Ben?
Could be that graph.
I mean, you can highlight over here and you can see every little thing here. You have to zoom in on it to really kind of, and to zoom in you come up here and you can look at it. You can also click per phase and it'll break it up per phase. So you can zoom in on the graph and it'll show you kind of,
you can see times when there's no attack as well.
Yeah, you see times when there's no actions, so they could be moving or they could be, whoops, wanted, pan. I think you
zoomed in real far. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I did. There we go. So you click the little arrow key here, pan, and you can see the timeline. You can see, okay, staff strike, that's an auto for 94 milliseconds. So you started to sneak in an auto there before using your staff 2. Little things like that. So this is how you can like really hyper analyze your rotation on different things. You can also see other things here, like let me reset this.
I'll just answer this a little bit too. When it comes to analyzing a player's rotation, when you don't play that spec in class, it can be a little bit difficult. What I like to do, and this is the lazy sneb way to figure out if somebody is playing well or not on their class. But rather than trying to analyze their rotation, because you don't know what you're looking at, right? Like you don't know the rotation. So how does looking at the rotation really help? You can look at the, if they're not attacking or if there's interrupted skills, but beyond that, it's not like you can help them with the rotation much. What I like to do is I like to go to Wingman. If you wouldn't mind doing this, Aizza. go to Wingman.
Go to Wingman.
And then go to like any random boss and just show 100 random people or whatever, and just it'll bring up all these logs. 100 logs. And then when you look at these, you can see what the average DPS. I go to exclude supporters as well, because you don't want those. So now you can see that the overall average DPS, which is actually skewed lower because this doesn't take into account offensive supports, that's about 12k. If you have somebody that's doing less than 12k, they are not fulfilling their role. Full stop. Then you can also look and get kind of a better idea based on what class they're playing. So let's say, for example, that they're playing Virtuoso at Deimos. We can go look and say, oh, well, what's like the median? Or what's the average? What's the mean? So you can look at all these. So like the median is like 16.5k, right? So it's interesting to look at these numbers and go, all right, well, if you're playing Virtuoso there and you're doing less than 16.5k DPS, that's a big goal for you. You should be doing about that. And if you're not, why? So that's when you go and you look and you see, okay, well, you're interrupting your skills a lot. Maybe you're not attacking. Maybe you're dead half the fight, whatever it is. But I think if you just don't know the rotation, it's pretty difficult to analyze a rotation and say exactly where someone's going wrong.
Yep. And then just because I saw it pointed out in chat, another good piece to look at, if you're looking at, let's say you're playing Soul Beast and you want to see, there's certain things that hit multiple times, like Whirling Defense. Barrage is a big one that a lot of people cancel hits. So Barrage hits, you can see here, 0 hits not connected. So I didn't miss a single hit. You've got hits per cast, 9, a couple hits probably right before in precast or right after phases, things like that. But every now and then you'll see on a bad log from a soul beast, it'll show 4 casts, 24 hits. So that means you're averaging 6 hits per cast instead of the usual 10 that you should be getting. So you can see same thing on like Whirling Defense. So I'm missing a couple hits on Whirling Defense, which is probably due to the boss phasing and that. But you can kind of see if you have 4 casts of a multi-hitting skill and it's only hitting 10 times or something like that, then okay, something's going wrong there. Either I'm aiming it poorly or maybe I'm canceling it. So like Barrage is one of the finicky skills. If you don't let that bar fully complete, the little gold bar that's right above your health bar, if that's not fully complete and gets a little flash, you're going to miss out on 7 or 8 of those 10 hits that you should be getting. Yeah. And that's going to be a huge difference because as you can see, I mean, now this is an old log, so it's a different rotation now. Barrage isn't as big of a deal on Soul Beast, but at the time, I mean, you can see it was 12% of your damage. If you're hurting 12% of your damage for a fight, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I would do. I typically go, and here's the thing, and Jay, I understand why you might think that it's skewed high. I guess it depends on how we talk about it, right? When we're looking at these logs, we're analyzing 100 logs that won, 100 logs that actually killed the boss as well. So, if we think about it, the more casual players that are represented here would probably fail more as well. And so people that kill the boss are more likely to have higher DPS as well. So that's true. However, because, I mean, if you look, there's some people doing less than 5k DPS. So this isn't a perfect example of pure DPS players. And that's why I'm saying that it's skewed low. If we were to take into account every player that's ever attempted a raid, 12k might be high, but we're thinking about the population of raiders. And I think casual raiders, I think we often underestimate them as well. A lot of times you can auto attack and do more damage than that. And people don't like to hear that, but it's true. You could auto attack on certain builds and do about 12k without too much issue, as long as you're consistently hitting the boss. Where people go awry is typically because they got hit by mechanics, or they died, or they didn't have boons or whatever. But assuming you have all boons and you have food and utility and you're hitting the boss, you can do a lot of damage with auto attacks. Anyway, we are kind of out of time here because I got to start my static, but we will probably do this again because, well, I think people really like this, and this was a really good opportunity. So big thank you to Aizza for being willing to chat today. I will put this on YouTube, so hello YouTube, so that other people can watch this, especially the EU people, because there's a lot of people on EU that can't watch right now because it's like 3 in the morning. Yeah, now everyone go look at your logs.
Go look at your logs. You have all the knowledge.
Go look at your logs. Join the Discord.
Have the IQ. And if you have questions about them, ping me. I don't care. I'm happy to get pinged. Nice. I just got pinged. I already got pinged.
Nice. Good.